Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our live question and answer class. We host this class each Saturday, and I take your questions regarding American English pronunciation and American accent. Feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time, and I'll turn to them in a moment. At the start of class, we always have a topic. Sometimes it's something a viewer requested or something that is pertinent to many of our viewers. And today I want to talk about the words writer and rider, rioter and quieter. So we'll use these contrast words to learn about some subtle differences in them, also be able to pronounce these words correctly, but I'm going to use it to teach you about a few concepts. We do have a full playlist for contrast words and minimal pairs. They're very useful for a lot of people in hearing differences in vowel and consonant sounds. Slight differences between two words can help you determine where you're going wrong and what you're doing correctly. So in the words writer and rider, we basically have the same pronunciation for the T of writer and the D of rider. And that means that we're using what's called a flap sound for both of these, for both this T and this D. And so I've rewritten them here for you with letter D in both of them. That's because in the middle of words, when we have a T or a D, and it's followed by an unstressed syllable, we use what's called a flap. So I'm not saying T like T or D like D. I'm doing a voiced sound where my tongue goes up to the T and D spot, but it doesn't build up any pressure. So if I say tight or tighter, this first T, tight, is really strong and there's a burst of air. And this flap that I use in tighter, it's just a light touch up. Really think of it like a very light D sound. So when I say rider, I don't want rider. I'm not saying the same kind of D like I am in the word dirt. That's a strong full D. I'm using a light flap, rider. So very light on that D sound. Writer, rider. You might notice when I say writer, he's a writer. Rider, he's a rider. There is a slight difference between these two sounds. It's not because I'm saying a T or a D. I am using a flap in both of them. It's marked here as a T in the dictionary and here as a D, but the way we pronounce it is with a flap. But the difference is because if I'm saying the difference between write and ride, notice when we say write and ride, I need to write, I need to ride. Those don't sound the same either. I can say write and ride with my true T and my true D, but what we typically say instead is write and ride. So when I say write, I keep my vowel short. I have an unreleased T sound, but the way you know it's a T and not a D is that that vowel is pretty short. She likes to write, I write, they write, versus she likes to ride, I ride, they ride. Again, I'm not saying my D, it's unreleased, ride, the D doesn't come out, but I'm holding this vowel longer. So when there's a voiced sound like a D, we hold the vowel longer. And when there's a voiceless sound like a T, we hold the vowel shorter, so a short duration for the vowel. So that's something that we talk about in several videos here on the channel. It's a subtle difference, but it still carries over into writer and rider, that in writer, I'm a little shorter on the vowel, rider, I'm a little longer. Technically, if I'm saying, oh, he's a writer, he's a rider, it's very hard to hear that difference, and so the most important thing is you want to use a flap sound, and they should sound pretty much the same. This one is a little bit longer here. This one's a little bit shorter here. Okay, then when we move to rioter, this one is different in that it has 3 syllables. Writer, rider, 2 syllables. Rioter, 3 syllables, and that first syllable is stressed. So we have the same I diphthong. We have the same flap, but before the flap we have a schwa or an I sound, a really reduced vowel here, rioter. So in the word riot, I would say it's kind of an I sound, maybe a little bit of a schwa. In rioter. You can be anywhere between the I and the schwa as long as you have a reduced vowel. It's not a clear vowel, not raya, ryo, or raya, but a fast little rioter. And I included quieter just because I wanted to show you that these two words rhyme, even though the spelling is quite different. In quieter, we have an I and an E for the I and sounds, and in rioter, we have an I and an O. But they both have that flap, sounds like a D. Quieter, he was a quieter rioter. So if you're trying to do rider and rioter, just notice that rioter is going to have the raya, it's going to have that gliding, and you might even hear a little bit of a y sound, a little bit of a glide as you move from the I shape to the clear, reduced shape. Rioter, quieter. Okay. Thanks for watching and bearing with me as I covered that topic. And I see, welcome to all of you. It's nice to see so many of you here this morning. I'll turn to your questions now. And feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. If you're watching this later on as a replay, you can leave me questions in the comments and I'll get back to you with resources and answers, or I'll cover your word in a future Word of the Day video. Okay, we have a question about interpret, interpreted, interpretation, interpreting, interpreter. So I do have videos for interpreter and many of your words. Let's break down what happens in interpret. Sorry, I misspelled. Interpret is stressed on the ter syllable. So we have a reduced in, and then we have our stressed ter, and then prit, we have an I vowel, a reduced sound at the end. So it sounds like in ter, prit. Then when we move to interpreted, our T changes to a flap, interpreted, and we have the id ending, interpreted. Interpreter, same thing. The T changes to a flap, interpreter. Interpreting, same thing, flap. And in interpretation, that's where we have a change. So interpreter, we'll use a flap T. In interpretation, it follows the rule that we stress the syllable before the shun. And so now this T is in the stress syllable, so now we have a tation. So same thing, interpret, or pra. Again, doesn't matter which vowel I use here. It's just a reduced vowel, interpretation. So interpreter, interpretation. That's a pattern that holds true for a number of words where, like, for example, educate and education, or I recently talked about graduate, graduated, and graduation. Watch out that you don't, that the syllable before the shun is what gets stressed and not the clear vowel elsewhere. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that question. Question about whether gentleman, and gentlemen sound the same, henchman and henchmen, policeman and policeman, mailman and mailmen. Okay, so yes, they do. When I'm saying man and men, obviously these aren't the same. I have the a vowel, like that, man. And for men, I have the vowel, get the men. So we have matching vowels here, a and ma, and me. But when those are at the ends of words like gentleman, they lose that clear vowel. So in a word like gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, he's a real gentleman. He's a real gentleman. I'm no longer saying gentleman or gentlemen. So if I were to say he is a gentleman or they are gentlemen, 2 words, adjective and noun, then they would stay the same. But when we change to gentleman, we end up with a reduced vowel in that final syllable. In the dictionary, you might see it like this, or like this, or even like this, no vowel, gentleman, gentleman. So in gentleman or gentleman, there's 2 ways to say that T. We no longer have a clear vowel at the end. So these 2, gentleman and gentleman, same. I met a nice gentleman. They behaved like gentlemen. He was a policeman his whole career. The policemen all gathered at the scene. So yeah, good question for basically for all of those. The only exception would be if I'm trying to be very clear, he was a policeman, he was a policeman. I could use a there, but usually the context tells us whether it's plural. So I'm talking about 1 policeman and several policemen. Always using this men reduced vowel. So losing your distinction between man and men. I do have a couple of videos talking about that. I think it might be with policeman and policemen. Just now, again, I said it with man and men to clarify those 2, but in context, in real speech, those sound the same. Okay, great. We have a question about the word literally. So I do have a video for literally. In American English, it's a little different. British English might be more literally. In American English, we do this like literally. So again, this T is flapped just like at the start where we were talking about writer and rider. Same thing in literally. Same as the word litter, like litter on the ground, or I could rewrite it that way, like we don't have this word, but if something was the lid of something, litter. So literally. Just try to stretch and lengthen on your li, and then your durally are going to be really fast. That is one strategy. If you're having trouble, you can try just doing the fast syllables. Durally, literally. That's one of the most requested words. Many people struggle with that. I think it is challenging for a lot of people to do that flap T, and also to do words that have both the L and the R sounds. So you aren't alone. Just be patient and try to break it down. Work slowly through the syllables of that word. Okay. We have a question about tie and tie. So these sound the same. They both have the I vowel, like in tight, yeah, just a different spelling. So I tie my shoe. I like eating Thai food. Great. Okay. A question about donkey and whether it rhymes with monkey, and it doesn't. So monkey is like, it's like money, where this letter O says the schwa vowel. So we have monkey, monkey. It's I think a ng sound, monkey. I'm checking myself, monkey, yeah. So we have an NG sound, first syllable stress, but donkey has the ong, so it's like an aw vowel. So donkey, first syllable stress. So like ding dong, like a doorbell. You can think about it like, as in the word dawn, the aw vowel, lawn or dawn or long. So think about a long donkey tail and a fun monkey. So these two vowels match the long tail of the donkey and the fun play of the monkey. Also with monkey, you can think about a word like money, or honey, same spelling with that O saying the vowel schwa. Great question, thank you. Okay, If you've asked more than one question, I'll come back to your question. I'm just trying to make sure everyone gets at least one answer before I do repeats. We have a question about this word antedate. I'm going to have to look that one up because that's not something I use regularly. Usually ante is ante. Sometimes it can be anti. So we'll check in Merriam-Webster. I usually look online, Merriam-Webster or Oxford Learner's Dictionary, because you can click on a recording and hear a voice telling you how to say it, which is very useful. So when it comes to ante, so if we just have ante by itself, ante, we're going to ante into the pot, for example. It's ante. When we come to antedate, the prefix ante, meaning before, antecedent. So this says antedate. Sorry. The IPA in Merriam-Webster is a little different. Okay, so antedate. Antedate has the antedate, with the stress on the date. So I would write that like antedate. Secondary stress on date, sorry, and primary stress on antedate. Antedate. Okay. I learned something new. Thank you. All right, we have a question about the word angry. So for angry, we have the ang combination. So here's where we have our a vowel like cat, but when it's combined with the ing sound, the ng sound, it gets a little bit higher. So using a word like hang or sang can help you. If I compare it to the a in that is more open, and angry, you can hear how the ng of the nasal of the ng sound affects the vowel of angry. So thinking about angry. This is an example of ng saying an ng and a g sound. So if I have a word like hanging, I don't have a g sound in there. There's just the ng sound. But in angry or anger, I have the ng sound and a g sound. Angry. Okay, that's a good word. Thank you for your suggestion. And you'd asked about that before. I think I missed it last week, so my apologies. I had been planning on covering that in our Word of the Day series as well. Okay, we have a question about whether leave me alone and leave me alone. So this alone, like not with someone else, and alone, whether they sound the same. And they would. So leave me alone. Leave me alone. But we wouldn't say leave me alone because it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so same alone and alone. Both a schwa and an O in lone. Okay, great. Thank you so much for all of the wonderful questions today. Let's see, we have a couple more that I didn't cover yet, so I'll go to those. Returnable. So start here with the turn, that's where we're stressing. And we can say returnable. We can either use an I vowel here, stressing on the turn. So we have a true T here, returnable. Thinking about it just like the word turn. And then instead of strong E here, we have a little more of a reduced I, returnable. If you say returnable, it's going to be fine as long as you're stressing on turn. And then bull. So a very reduced, almost no vowel between the b and the dark L, bull, returnable. Is that returnable? Make sure you get a returnable gift. Great question. Thank you so much. Okay, feel free to put your questions in the comments if you have any more for me today. The topic at the start was looking at our flap T sounds, our unreleased Ts, how we use a longer vowel before a T rather than a D in the middle of words and at the ends of words. Just a little heads up that we're doing a vowel series. We'll be getting back to that sometime next week, where I'm going through each of the vowels of English. You can see those on our vowels playlist, as well as on a special playlist called the Vowels Challenge. So far we've talked about the E, the I, and the A vowels. So next we'll talk about the eh, like in red tent. We're working our way through all of these vowels to understand how to say them, what words they're in, how they're spelled, error patterns that can happen. So that's going to be a great series for you if you're wanting to really solidify your understanding of how we say vowels in English, how we can use anchor words, and also resources on our channel and resources on our website to help you with vowels. A lot of times those minimal pair words that we're looking at on our contrast words playlist have to do with slight differences in vowel sounds, and just getting an understanding of how American vowels work, because we do have a lot of different spellings for vowels, so that can make it very confusing. And also hearing the differences for vowels is very challenging in terms of we listen to English through the filter of our native language, and vowels, sometimes we can't really hear some of these differences until we really specifically focus in on vowels and contrasts. So using this contrast words playlist can be helpful for that, as well as having a good solid understanding of some anchor words for each of those vowels. I'm also creating some new videos for you for shadowing practice in English, and these have a focus on fluent speech, intonation, getting some of those little details of how we change speech in connected words, so linking and reducing, and the new shadowing videos will be coming out soon as well. Do feel free to keep leaving your questions and comments. I will be continuing to have our word of the day series, where I'm covering pronunciation of words, but we're branching out and expanding some of the different resources we have for you here on the channel, for those of you who are wanting to get more details, more of a foundation, and also more advanced work on your accents. Okay, we have a question about the word hedgehog. I do have a video for this, actually, surprisingly, because it's a compound noun. So we have two nouns together making a new noun. In that case, we always stress on the first noun, but we still have a clear vowel on the second noun. So it's sort of stressed in both syllables, with the primary stress being on the first syllable. So hedgehog. So it sounds like hedge. Primary stress on hedge, secondary stress on hog. I would write that like hedge, same j sound as in jump or judge, and hog, hedgehog. Yeah, that's a good word. Thank you. Thank you for joining as a channel member. Those of you who just did, it's wonderful to have so much support from the channel members, and channel members get a quicker response to their requests. I'll have a members special class for you when you make a request, or I'll add your video to my list and make it quicker in our Word of the Day playlist. Okay, we have a question about how to pronounce itted. Yes, I have a video for this as well. So it means it would, as in it'd be nice if, it'd be okay with me, or it'd been a long time since. So depending on the sentence, this contraction can stand for either of these, but both of these have the same pronunciation. Itted is going to be pronounced the same, even if it means it would or it means it had. The context of the sentence will tell you which one it means. And it sounds like itted. So we have first syllable stress, the I vowel, and then this T is flapped. We have another I sound, a reduced I, and then our final D, it'd be. Sometimes I write it like it'd. It'd be great if I could use it'd consistently when I'm speaking. And Americans will use these contractions. They rarely say it would or it had if they can use it'd in the sentence. We use it would and it had if we need to stress on would or had. Otherwise, most of the time we use it'd. Great question. Thank you so much. Okay. We have a question about cuddle versus coddle. So in cuddle, we have the schwa vowel. So it sounds like cuddle. In coddle, we have the open ah vowel. And this difference, the versus ah, is challenging for a lot of people. Usually, what I hear is that rather than being more closed for the in cuddle, that people will open too much. So the error will be that they'll say more like coddle for this instead of cuddle. So one suggestion I have is to use another word like some cuddle or fun cuddle, and then not coddled or my father coddles, so you can match that vowel of the ah sound versus the sound. I do have a number of videos talking about this contrast and a specific video for working on schwa if you have the error of it sounding a little bit like an sound. Good, that's a great request, thank you. And using those matching words like some or fun and not or father makes it easier in these contrasts because between fun and not, you probably don't have too much of an issue. Having a little lighting issue here. Sorry about the flashing. Okay, great. We have a question about contractions with the word this. It'll rain, that'll do it, but this'll be fine. This'd be fine. Or whether we can make contractions. So in writing, there are no contractions for this will or this would, but in speaking, there are. So if you're writing these phrases, you have to write out will or would, but when people say this'll be fine, this'll be, we do contract it to this'll, which sounds like this'll, like missile. This'll be fine. This missile won't be fine. This'll and this'll. And for this'd, same thing. We have to write this would, but in speaking, we can do this'd be, which sounds like this'd. This'd be good. This would be good if we do this. This'll be okay. Yeah, same thing with that. We don't really actually write that'll for that will, but we do say that'll be good. That'll be okay. Or for that'd, we don't typically write that, but we'll say that'd. That'd be nice. That'd be okay with me. Yeah, good point. And with it'll, same thing. It will, it'd. We just talked about it'd. Yeah, so you can see more about contractions, how we pronounce contractions and how we use contractions in our linking and reduced sounds playlist. That is something that's we are also covering in our new shadowing videos, talking about real conversation and how we connect words and reduce sounds. We use contractions. We contract things that we don't contract in writing. Those are all things that you can learn about in our linking playlists and also in our Real Talk videos. We also have a Real Talk course on our website, speechmodification.com. And in that course, we teach you how to listen to TV and movies, listen for those connections, imitate and shadow, and find those differences between what's written and what's spoken. And that course is inexpensive. I keep it under $2, just so you can use it to advance your knowledge and understanding of linking and reduced sounds for fluent speech. That's our Real Talk course, and you can find it on our website, speechmodification.com. Okay. Thank you so much for your contributions and for the super. I really appreciate it. Feel free to ask questions if you have some. And we have a question from another one of our channel members about the vowel in stroke and whether it can be pronounced more than one way. So not that I know of. For me, stroke, O is always going to be the O diphthong. Her swimming stroke was very strong. He suffered a stroke last year. It's going to just have our O sound, stroke. Yeah, I can't think of another application or a difference in that vowel. So always just the O, stro. If it gives you trouble to end on the K sound, I think practicing saying it with just O, stroke, tends to be helpful for people just because that O diphthong in a lot of other languages it's just an O, and in English it's longer and it's more of a diphthong. O, stroke. Yeah, you just want to watch out that you hold it a little longer. So not stroke, but stroke, O, closing a little bit as you're saying it. I hope that answered your question. If not, give me a follow-up in the chat and let me know if I handled that correctly for you. Okay, great. We had a comment about learning the TH sound. Also a question about whether we can reduce ing at the ends of words. So typically for most verbs, talking, working, words like thing or sing, we use the full ng sound. There are a few places in casual speech where we change this to an n sound, like how you doing? How's it going? But that's casual. And you might say, oh, I was talking to her. Most of the time, though, we use the full ing. I'm talking to you. I'm working today. I'm going there. This is reserved for, pretty informal speech. So you wouldn't want to go to job interview and say, how are you doing? Where are we going with this company? You're going to use the full ing sound. There are some dialects of English, Southern English, Black American English, that use more of an N than an NG. So you'll hear it in some American speech, but typically as a non-native speaker, you should work on making sure that you use the full ing, NG sound in verbs that have ing. I do have several videos talking about NG, error patterns to watch out for. One of the common ones is that people will say more talking or talking, and you don't want any G sound. Ing is its own sound, NG sound. You also don't want to use just an n where the tongue is lifting in the front. So if you have more questions about that, I can refer you to my video talking about NG and the common errors that it can make. Great question. All right, we have a question about ambiguity. So ambiguity, this is a great word. We stress on the gu syllable. First vowel is the a, like in cat. But just like in our word angry, the am, it might be a slightly raised a because of the sound. So when I say that, ambiguity, you might hear a slight difference in that a sound. It shouldn't be too different though. And then we have a reduced I sound here, Then our stress comes on the gu, and this letter U is an example of letter U is an example of a U that says U and ya. So we're going to have a ya sound and an U sound. So it's going to be like gu, ambigu, and then we have an I, flap T, and an E. Gu-I-D. So I'll rewrite that flap here for you with a D. We don't want a strong D there, but we do have the voice on and a little flap up. Itty. So in words that end with ity, you want to watch out for making sure you have a lax I and then a tense E, even though they both go by fast. we don't want ity, not ambiguity or ambiguity, but rather ambiguity, ity. You can get more help for that ity ending on our website and in our we have some other videos for that. And then I would say the gu part is challenging. If that gives you a challenge, try just starting with oo, then add your y sound, oo, you, and then finally add your g sound, oo, you, gu, guity, ambiguity. And then once, of course, you can say ambiguity by itself, try practicing it in some short phrases, like there's a lot of ambiguity about that topic. When she speaks, there's a lot of ambiguity. Okay, great. Thank you for that request, and thank you for joining as a channel member. Let's see, we have a few more questions. We have a question about the difference in sounds between beaten and bitten. So in beaten, we have the tense E sound, beaten and bitten. Both of these will have a stopped T. So in beat, I'm gonna actually not say my T, not beaten. You can say beaten, but Americans will say beaten, where they don't release that T and then they go right to a syllabic end. Beaten, beaten. And for bitten, same thing. We're gonna have the I vowel, an unreleased T, and an N sound. So she's beaten me in every game. I was bitten by a mosquito. So you can also use other words to help you with the E and the I here. So he was beaten and it was bitten. Making sure that you match the E in he and beat and I in it and bit. Great, wonderful question. Thank you. Okay, we have a question about the difference in placement and pronunciation between the major I vowel and schwa. Okay, so the question was the vowel I, like in it, and the vowel like in some. And the placement difference is that I is high and front. So we have E like eat and I like it. Then the sound, my tongue is flat and central. So in I, the back of my tongue is much more lifted. The front of the tongue can be a little bit central, but not too far central. One thing that can help is recognizing that the red tent vowel, the and the are in about a similar level, whereas the I is higher. And then you may have noticed when we're talking about words like, let's do fin and fun. So when I is stressed, fin, fun, you should feel your tongue is more flat and there's more space above the tongue in the back. Fun, the jaw is slightly more open. Fin. The tongue is really lifted here in the back and there's just a little space in the front. Fi. So the tip of my tongue might be down. The back of my tongue is very lifted. Fin, fun. The back of my tongue is much lower and there's more space above the back of my tongue. But in words where the I and the are unstressed, for example, the difference between, let's do above and between. In this word between, it's marked in the dictionary with the I sound. I do hear people say something closer to between. So that reduced schwa and the reduced I, those are very short and they might happen somewhere more in this space. Like I don't have to say return. It could be return, kind of somewhere in this space, return. It's not return, but it's also not return. It's a reduced vowel, return. So there is a continuum between the I and the and those unstressed fast I and schwa sounds fall in there. When I'm talking about fin versus fun, it's about the height of the back of the tongue. Fin is high, fun is more flat. So I would suggest checking out our vowel challenge series where so far I've talked about the I and the A and the E, and I'll be talking about and and all of the vowels over time. Also, some of our contrast words, our videos on our contrast words playlist can help you with those vowel differences. But hopefully that answered your question about those specific vowels. Great question. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a question about fin and thin. So the difference here, both of these have the I vowel. So when I'm saying fin, what you should feel is that restriction of air is between the lip and the teeth. So if I come close, fin, I'm making that sound with my teeth and my lower lip touching. It's kind of the front of my teeth and the back of my lip. Whereas the fin, the restriction of air happens between the teeth and the tongue. So they sound very similar, but the difference between fin and fin is all about the tongue placement. For fin, my tongue is not involved. It's my teeth and lips that are making the f sound. For fin, it's my teeth and tongue that's making the sound. Probably this one gives you more difficulty, so you want to work on, if you're trying to get that sound, you can try it just by itself. Just try to make sure that you can hold it and just rest your tongue between your teeth. And then you can also try putting it between vowels like oo, thu, ah, tha, to get it to happen more easily in connected speech. Definitely a challenging sound if it's not in your native language, which it's not in many native languages. Okay. It's nice to see so many of you here, and thank you for all these great questions. We'll keep going for a few more minutes, and then we'll wrap up for today. We have a question about ear, here, and here. So these two are both the same. They have the and the ear sound. This one has no sound at the beginning. So if you have difficulty with these, it's probably because making that sound is challenging for you. What you should feel is that the back of the throat is open. When I say, there's just a little constriction there that makes some friction, some noise. When I say ear, ear, can be a little bit of a glottal stop before it. I'm just starting right on the E vowel. So try saying other pairs like this, like E and he, ear and here. So I can hear with my ears, and I'm here in the room. Those two have the same. Ear, there's no sound at the start. So E and he, av and have. You can practice these kinds of pairs to help you, and check out our videos for minimal pairs for the H sound, as well as our Sounds of English course. We'll talk about how to put that H sound on. The other thing that I hear sometimes is in some accents, people will have trouble starting just on the vowel and they add a little sound before that. In which case you want to just try to do E, ear, practice getting started right on the vowel without that air flowing here, ear and here. Good question. Thank you so much. Okay, we have a question about whether Americans use dreamed or dreamt, dealed or dealt. So I don't think we say dealed, we tend to say dealt. And for dreamed or dreamt, dreamt I think is a little bit more common. I dreamt about that last night. I dreamed about it. Yeah, I think we use both dreamed and dreamt. He dreamt that he was a superhero. I dreamed that blank. Probably dealt more, dreamt maybe more than dreamed as well. It's hard for me to speak for all Americans, and often I will do research to find out which regions say what, and whether or not these are regional differences and what's more common. But off the top of my head, I have to just go with what comes naturally to me, which I am representative of native speakers, but of course there's many differences among native speakers as well. Okay, one more. We're going to do pen versus pin. So when we were looking before at the I and the schwa, we had the I and the E. Excuse me. Again, I would say for pin, thinking about a word like it's a pin, and then get a pen, the E is more open and the I is more closed. So it's a pin, get a pen. Again, getting familiar with those placements for vowels and those contrasts can be really helpful, and hopefully that helps you with those two close challenges. Okay, thank you so much for being a part of class today. Nice long class, great questions from all of you. If you're watching this later on as a replay, you can put your questions in the comments and I'll get back to you with an answer and resources. We'll be back tomorrow with another word of the day, and Saturday we'll have our live question and answer class next week. So I hope to see you there. Thanks so much for supporting the channel by subscribing, commenting, watching the videos, and a special shout out, thank you for those of you who've joined as channel members. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to seeing you in our next class. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye everyone. Thanks for a great class.